Hello and welcome to my channel, Not the Hiring Manager. My name is Eric Crump and I'm making these videos to help out people who are seeking jobs and need a little bit of help or guidance in writing their resumes and applying to positions and basically landing a job. I am focused on the tech industry. I myself am a cybersecurity engineering manager for Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, DHS CISA. I have a passion for helping people out, and these videos are one way for me to kind of give back, especially as I have limited time, and so I can just have people watch these and then coach them on other things. So without further ado, this video is my fifth video, and it is going to focus on civilian resumes. I won't go into depth on like how to bullets and rewriting bullets and giving you a bunch of examples on writing bullets. I may make another video on that, just focused on that, because that can be very intensive. But this is focused on the overall layout that I do for my resumes for a tech position when I apply to a civilian job. There's certain things that I have been exposed to. Um, Short, quick story. I was applying to Air Electronics, and I was lucky enough to have that hiring manager give me some feedback in a very pointed manner. It wasn't fun, it wasn't easy, but it was very, very useful. And so I would like to pass on some of that information to people. It's helped me out a lot. Once again, I'm going to tell you this is just my opinion. I am not an expert. I'm not some resume coach. I'm not trying to get you to review your resume. I don't want to review your resumes. I'm not getting paid to do any of this stuff. This is just me trying to kind of give back to the community and help out the young people and not spend hours and hours of my time doing it, saying the same thing over and over. So without further ado, we'll move on to the next slide. The agenda that we're going to cover this is first things first, the foundational information that I think you need before you even start going to this. Then next we'll move into finding out what they want. Then I'll cover the resume process from my viewpoint or how I approach the resume. And then I will cover the layout that I use. And then I'll help a little bit on like finding verbiage for your narratives and how you do it. And then lastly, I can't belabor this enough, it's okay to suck. And so we'll go over a few things that go into that being okay to suck. So moving on. First things first, I will start off with the background of Eric Crump. I joined the Marine Corps in 1998. I was a parachute rigger for 8 years. I got out to go be a chemical engineer. I got accepted to University of Texas at Austin in their chemical engineering program. And that lasted all of 1 year or one semester, because you need to know you want to be a chemical engineer at 19, not 27 with a wife and a kid. So we quickly found myself back in the military. It's 2007, and the war was kicking off. I went back into the Army instead of the Marine Corps. I know some people call me a traitor, but circumstances and whatnot was happening. So I went in the Army as a parachute rigger, and I was in 82nd Airborne as a parachute rigger. I was like, oh, this is not the same kind of job as being a Marine Corps parachute rigger. So I switched over to being an intelligence analyst, 35 Fox, got a deployment to Afghanistan out of that. But I was also able to pick up a commission during that same time frame to be a chemical defense officer. So after that deployment in Afghanistan, I came back, went to OCS, and then went to become a chemical defense officer. I did that for the next 8 years, and I retired out in 2018 as a captain in the Army, out of the Army, retired captain, chemical defense officer. Nowhere in there was IT besides what I like to do on my own time, which was I built a computer in my barracks room in 1998, way back in the days of AOL. And I did a lot of stuff, and I've just been building my own computers for a long time. I enjoy these things. It's kind of like my hobby. So I was able to do that piece. I knew operating systems pretty well because I didn't run Windows to begin with. I ran SUSE Linux because I was a poor, broke Marine in the barracks. And then it turned around, and because Linux took a lot of effort, I just bought the bullet and got Windows. But long story short, I also just helped a bunch of small businesses, mom and pop shops that didn't know how to like network their computers or set up things. I've helped people set up their PCI DSS sets for getting their payment cards. It's all pretty easy now, but 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't near as easy. So I just did a bunch of little volunteer things like that, and I did a lot of little practicing. Like I've played around on Hack the Box and Try Hack Me and whatnot. But nowhere in there was I actually an IT professional. So this goes into the first things first, which is you got to make yourself what you want. A retired chemical defense officer, parachute rigger, isn't what IT people want because you don't have the skills. Just like you wouldn't want an IT person to be a plumber. They don't know plumbing. They don't know all the materials that go into it, the flow rates, or anything else. And so you have to get trained up in skills in the areas that you want to go to. Now, if you're an IT guy switching over to cybersecurity, pretty easy because cybersecurity is just the next step in IT. But if you are changing job categories, it is going to take some time, effort, and training. Rajo, um, case in point, I'll just give myself an example. Retired in 2018, chemical defense officer, didn't know what I wanted to do, started a business for home inspection that I didn't like that. Got a job out in Pueblo Chemical Depot as an emergency operations center. Didn't like that, and it's a little bit easier for me. Retired military guy, having a retirement paycheck and a little bit of disability coming in helps cover, your necessities. So it made it a little easier for me to train. But I just decided, I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go into the cybersecurity. I have a couple of friends that did it. A really good friend from the Marine Corps time. I won't say his name because he's pretty prominent in the cybersecurity industry, but talking to him and everything else is like, oh, this is maybe a category that I would like to go to. Anyway, so that wasn't just a night day like, oh, I'm going to switch into cybersecurity. I had to go back. I did a 6-month cybersecurity boot camp, hands-on, 8 hours a day, doing all the training and everything else. And then I had to go get certifications. So I had to go through more training to get my A plus, Network plus, Security plus, certified ethical hacker, certified network defender. Except for I didn't pass certified network defender. Talk about hubris and somebody that was my ego was too big for myself. And then I rolled into a master's degree in computer science. So it's one of those things of like, it's going to take some time, effort, and energy. That wasn't a 5-day process. That was a 2-year process. But it's doable. And I'll say, I was able to switch into cybersecurity with just doing the boot camp and a couple of certifications. But most people aren't coming in cybersecurity to make $60,000 a year. They're coming into cybersecurity because they want to make a 6-figure salary. And so I didn't get into the 6-figure salary area until I'd gotten my master's degree done. So changing job categories and starting over will be kind of have to check your ego. I went from being an officer in the military to basically a private in the industry. Shut my mouth, learn my job, do a bunch of nicknoid job pieces. I wanted so bad to say certain things to management a lot of time. I was like, hey man, I'm not a manager. I'm just a private. I'm learning my systems. I'm learning my tools. I'm doing what I need to do. So that goes back into you must make yourself what they want. If you're going to change jobs, it's going to be a slog. It's not an easy thing. It'll take some time, dedication, and effort. But what I'll say for this is, once you start getting that training and stuff done and you've started to make yourself what they want you to be, you need to attack your resume like a salesperson. I give this analogy to a lot of people. You are your own product, right? Like a company is going to try to sell you something. Ford tries to sell you a Ford vehicle. You are trying to sell Ford, you as a cybersecurity professional. So you are your own product, which means you are trying to get them to buy you at your price. Or I like to say it, I'm trying to get you to buy me at my price that I want. I'm a salesperson for me. I'm my own product. To cover a letter or not, this is an ongoing debate with a lot of people. I tend to not do a cover letter because it's a whole lot of effort for not any return that I can see. I have yet to submit a cover letter for any of my positions that I've gotten. I have applied to multiple positions and never, ever, ever have I put a cover letter on. Now, if I was going to go apply to like a stuffy law firm that's been around for like 100 years, I might put a cover letter on because those kinds of businesses like them and want them. I think it's easy enough. I'll cover it later on in a couple of slides. It's easy enough to ask them if they really want a cover letter, and then go from there. I will tell you, in my tech experience, I have never submitted a cover letter ever on any of my resumes. That doesn't mean don't do it. That just means I don't think the value is there anymore. And I have seen a bunch of people spending hours and hours and hours on a cover letter when they could have just spent those hours and hours and hours on their resume. Okay, so next thing to think on, once you got your base level foundational stuff down and you're like, okay, I am roughly what they want, uh, um, in the foundational stuff, right? Like I've changed over to being a cyber guy. Now you need to know like what specifically do they want? And that goes on, what does the job post say, right? Like what do they have posted on their job? And here, I'll pull up, I did a research real quick. I'm a cyber engineer, so I just looked up cyber engineer positions in Colorado Springs, right? I was the first one, senior network cyber engineer with security clearance. They'll tell you what they want. They'll tell you who they are, right? Like this is their mission. But then these bullets are like, this is what we want. We want somebody that can evaluate the government's implementation of risk management framework, evaluate DevSecOps processes, agile methodology, and CI/CD continuous integration and delivery. So they're going to tell you, what do we want, right? So you go in here and you look at like, okay, hey, well, this is a great one. Desire to obtain new skills and be a mentor for junior team members. That's easy enough to show and say, like, if you've at all done, I got a new certification while you're on the job or anything else, or I'm always getting a new certification. Um, it'll tell you the job posting. So you say, hey, all right, this is what they want. Then off of that, knowing what they want, before I start going off of my own resume format or anything else, I find somebody at the company that I can talk to. Generally, it's a recruiter. You can find them on LinkedIn, but you might be able to get on their like recruiting website. Almost all companies have like a careers page on their website. Connect with one of those recruiters or a manager. It's too easy to do, especially on a cyber side. Like this is a little bit of OSINT, right? Like open source intelligence. Okay, I know I'm applying to the CMB2 area for Lockheed Martin, whoever's running that contract right now. Anyway, so then you go on to LinkedIn, you're like, okay, let me find somebody, like just put in C2MBC, whatever the thing is, and the organization, and you search for that, like people pop up like this person works on that contract right now. Like, okay, link with them on LinkedIn or look them up a little bit. Don't get creepy and like do a white pages lookup on their personal cell phone and then start calling them at their house. And that's a little bit like creepy and stalkerish. But you can connect with them professionally on LinkedIn. That's what LinkedIn's for. You can go on there and you're like, hey, I want to apply to a job in Lockheed Martin. Get on there and go find somebody that's a Lockheed Martin recruiter. There's plenty of them out there. You connect with one and say, hey, I'm trying to look at this position in this area. And they'll connect you with somebody that's actually a recruiter for that position. So connect with a recruiter or a manager at the organization and find out if they have a resume format. I will take it back. I applied for a position with an organization called Scene Innovation. Awesome company. I really liked it. They're a good company to work for. They're a small business, so not a lot of positions, but they took care of me pretty well. When I applied to them, they came back and said, hey, here's our resume format. Can you please take your resume and put it in our resume format so we can push it forward? Too easy. And so those are good things to have, right? I didn't even have to go ask them. They came and said to me, hey, we like your resume, but we want to see it in our format. So I changed it. But it's really easy to go in and find somebody and say, hey, if nothing else, like you're not going to help me out with the job or anything else, can you just give me the resume format that your organization uses? And most people will do that. The next thing I'll cover on what they want is don't get scared by a job posting that has a lot of stuff that you don't even know about. Because I'm going to go with this part of use the job posts to develop. Oh, shoot, let me go back. Use the job post to develop more skills, right? So I am a cloud guy. That's a lot of what I do is cloud development and management of that. I knew Ansible, okay. I didn't really know Terraform. I didn't even know what Terraform was until a job posting said you need to use Terraform or we need somebody that's skilled in Terraform. So guess what I did? I went and looked it up. I watched a couple of YouTube videos on Terraform. There's Udemy classes that didn't cost a lot for Terraform. And I just said, hey, I don't know what this tool is. So I went and looked it up, and I got a little hands-on experience with it. And your hands-on experience doesn't have to be with the organization. You can do it on your computer at home, or you can set up a cloud network or something to do this. But from there, that shows the hiring managers that, like, yeah, you might not know everything we want, but you're motivated to go learn things, and you didn't just watch a video, you actually put some hands on and developed X, Y, and Z with it, or you did this, and you can talk through the actual intricacies of the process for it. So use the job post to develop more skills, right? I don't have every skill that's out there. I don't use every tool that's out there. There's so many tools for so many things. That's not even funny. So when a job wants you to use a tool, use that time to go research it and figure it out. And then lastly, for what do they want? You don't have to fill everything listed. Like that's great. That's great if you can, like, every single thing listed on that job posting, and you can say, I can do this, 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 and this, and here's the experience I've seen. Here's where I did it here and here and here and here. That's awesome. They'll probably be very interested in a person like that. But remember that a business is a business. And guess what? Sometimes price matters more than capability. I know that sounds crappy, but you're talking about return on investment and risk and everything else. They may be willing to take somebody that fills half of the requirements and pay them the base entry level money, and then let them train up into being able to do the job, and then pay them more over time. Like, cost actually comes into play, and that can be a selling point for you in an interview. Is like, hey, I only have like 50% of these things, but I'm willing to basically have my payment from you be the experience of doing this stuff. And experience is a form of compensation, right? Like, getting the ability to use some of these tools that are multi-million dollar tools that the government kind of contracts on. Like, you're not going to be able to do that on your own. So these guys are allowing you to get some experience doing it. So once again, you don't have to fill everything listed. You can apply to at like 50% of the rating, but you need to be able to talk everything that's on there, but maybe not do everything. And then use it as a selling point of, like, hey, I can come in as cheaper. Don't go in and demand top price if you can't do everything. And then realize if you can do everything and you're demanding top price, you still may not be their pick, because a business is a business. All right, moving on to resume process. Once again, I'm going to highlight it with, this is just my approach. I am not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying, like, I'm going to get you a job and this is the way you got to do it. Hey, look, there's probably plenty of people in the comments be like, go pound sand here, Crump. Like, hey, that's fine. My feelings aren't going to be hurt if you come back and say, like, I used it and it was horrible. I used this and it was way better. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just doing this to help people out in the best way I know. The only thing I can tell you is I've gotten multiple jobs off the way I do what I do, and I've had several people get jobs off of me telling them these things. So if it didn't work, I wouldn't tell you it, but I'm not promising anything either, and I'm also not charging you to, do your resume and fix your resume or anything else. Mainly, I hate that crap and I don't want to do it. I barely want to do it for myself. I don't mind telling people how to do it, but I don't like writing resumes, or even really reviewing them a lot. I will for certain people, but I don't like to do a lot of resume reviews. So, resume process, get back on track. My approach, tech focused. So when I retired from the military, they had this thing called TAP and TAMP classes. It was Transition Assistance Program. And it was to teach you how to become a civilian and get out of the military. Because you know how many resumes I wrote in the military? None, zero, not a gosh darn one. So when you get out, it's all about the resume, right? And so when you transition from the military, they teach you to write a project management resume. I expect if you're watching this video, you're looking at going into the tech space. Tech is a whole different animal, right? Project management is a lot about managing people, and it's a whole lot more emotional intelligence driven, and it's a whole lot more, do you understand how to word things and kind of expound on stuff and schmooze it up. Tech is full of a lot of people that are like, they came to tech because they don't like that stuff. They're drawn to a binary response. It's on or it's off. They're math focused. They want just the facts, man. And so I had to really learn that. Like, I got not a lot of traction on my resumes for the first year and a half or so. And then I think I told the beginning, Aero Electronics, this hiring manager tore me a new one on my resume, told me a lot of great information that I'm fixing to tell you. And a lot of it was how I approached this, and just knowing that the tech industry is a lot more technically savvy, just the facts, and they like a layout to help them make a decision quickly. Also in the resume process, Details matter. My associate's degree is computer science from Hawaii Pacific University. My bachelor's degree is a history degree. My master's degree is a computer science degree again. I have a bunch of certs in computer stuff. Um, I'm a history major only because that's what the Army said I had to do when the way I commissioned. They're like, ah, great, you're gonna be an officer, but your degree's not finished, so now you're a freaking history major because that's 3 classes less. That being said, I learned to love and use Grammarly. I pay for the premium subscription. They are not supporting me. Grammarly doesn't pay me a damn thing for any of these videos. I'm not even pimping them. Besides, I use it personally to help out because I suck at making sure my grammar is great because I'm not really a writing kind of guy. I've gotten a whole lot better because history major, you have to write a lot. What I'll tell you is the history degree helps a lot in the research area, and that's one thing that I would really like to push forward for cyber focused people is research matters. Knowing how to research is really good. Back to I use Grammarly, right? I have no shame in saying, yeah, I use a tool that's available to come in and check behind myself because I understand my weaknesses. I understand that that's not a strong suit for me. Spell check as well. I love Andrew Jackson, and he's got a quote. It's something I'm paraphrasing here. It's a poor man who can't think of at least 3 different ways to spell a word. That doesn't work in today's world, right? Like, so spell check. It's in Word. You know, it's ubiquitous across the board. All things kind of do spell checks, so use it and make sure you're checking it well. And then maybe if you're not great at grammar, incorporate another tool that you have to pay for. Yeah, you might save yourself a whole lot of time, effort, and energy if you just pony up a little bit of cash to pay for a tool that helps you out. Last thing I do for my resumes, read it out loud to myself. Literally, I'll pick up my resume and read it word for word. And there's, a little psychology goes into that because when you're reading and you're not using your mouth or anything else, you're just like proofreading it through your head, your mind skips over words. A misspelled word can look right. I think there's this whole set of like if the first and the last letter in the word are right and all the letters are scrambled up, your brain will read the word just fine. So know that like you short circuit that mix up by reading it out loud because when you have to sound out those letters, now it says, I got this wrong, or that doesn't sound right to me. And also, man, a lot of people tend to write run-on sentences when they're trying to compress all their information into one sentence. It turns into like super long and it doesn't make sense. And so reading it out loud to yourself is a very good technique. Also, having somebody else review resume. My wife generally reviews my resume and says, you are the most idiot person I've ever seen. And that really does good for me too. The next technique for the process that I use is I have multiple resumes. Not now, not anymore. When I first started doing this, I had a resume for pen testing. I had a resume for cybersecurity engineer. I had a resume for information systems security officer. I had a resume for differ. I had a resume for program management for computers. So having multiple resumes that you can change and adjust, it makes it easier for you to apply to certain point specific jobs because really your resume needs to be targeted to each position that you apply for. Until you get to like the higher levels where it's a lot more generalized, you really want to have multiple resumes targeted at each different position. So I target each individual job post. I'll look at their duties and say, hey, this is part of what they want. And so, I can have multiple cyber engineer resumes because one guy's description of cyber engineering is different from another organization's description of cyber engineering. And so having that out. One of the techniques I use for it is I have a Word document that's just got my experience and all the bullets that I've ever made, just saved in this one gigantic Word document. So I can just pick and pull duties and descriptions and experience and then tweak them off of there. So that makes it a whole lot easier, right? Like I'm doing time cost savings by just keeping track of all that stuff, and I can pick and pull bullets that I've already made. The next thing that I'll say is use the post verbiage and wording. Paraphrasing is key to showing that you know how to explain your experience in their terms. And this is why that matters. This is a negotiation, right? You are on the back foot. You need this job. They need somebody to fill this job, but that doesn't have to be you, which means they've got 10 or 15 people. The shortage is in your side, not theirs. There's only one job and there's 15 people going for it. So you have to kind of bend yourself and your will to their frameworks and the way they work. this is one way that you show that you're able to do that, is to say, hey, I used your keyword and phrasings, and I paraphrased it with my experience to show you that I can tell you in your framework how I work and operate. That shows you understand their framework, that it shows that you understand that you can meld and mix into a team, right? Like you're the outsider coming into their team trying to work. Well, that's always kind of like a disjointed gear change, if you will. And they're trying to limit that as much as possible, because there's nothing like having a new team member to really jank up the processes that you've got going on. So you are showing them, if you can paraphrase in their wording and stuff, your experience, you're showing them that you can fit well into their teams. Because it's not just about like, can you do the duties, but can you fit in the team as well as do the duties? Next step, so layout, and I'm going to show you my resume now. And I'll go kind of like bullet back to the resume, bullet back to the resume. So first things first, summary. Not so fast, surprise! This is your elevator pitch, and I'll show you with mine. A lot of the teachings out there for resumes is this is your time to like give your overall summary of who you are and what you're doing and blah 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 blah. And my first summary for my resume when I got out of the military was like, dedicated veteran with 20 years of service managing people and personnel and yada 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 bull crap. 4 or 5 sentences. It took up the first third of my freaking resume. Tech, no. In tech, once again, this is your elevator speech. This, you should already have this kind of set up. You know, everybody talks about it. An elevator speech is something that, like, if you got on an elevator with the CEO of a company and the guy was like, hey, who are you? What are you doing? Oh, I am blah, 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 and I'm here to do blah, 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 and I'm trying to, like, this is what I can do for you, right? And for me, I even said it in my resume, like, what I can do for you. I changed it from summary to, like, bam, punch you in the face. This is what I can do for you. 2 to 3 sentences max, right? 2 to 3 sentences for you to tell them what capabilities you have to bring to the table. So this isn't like your experience or anything else. You can so you have to do a little research. Like, I bring program and operations management experience. I can do program management or operations management, and those two things are different, just so you're tracking. I can do operational long-range planning. I can do cybersecurity systems engineering. I can do risk management. I can do regulation, compliance, and auditing, intelligence analytics, system hardening, threat hunting, and vulnerability identification mitigation, right? Those are all areas or capabilities that organizations will do. You can look up cybersecurity or IT capabilities and probably find a lot of this terminology out there. You know, and so this is like one big long sentence, right? Like, you got to make sure that you don't turn it into a run-on sentence. But now I've been able to boil down a whole big area of information into one sentence that is easily read. And then I kind of focus on the other parts that really actually kind of matter. Your soft skills, right? I've got interpersonal relations and communication skills with the ability to cross-coordinate with executive level leadership while orchestrating operations throughout domestic, international, and high-pressure environments, right? I was a battle captain in the Army, downrange in Afghanistan. That was a pretty high-pressure environment, and I definitely talked to executive level leadership all the time while orchestrating operations. But this really comes down to tech people are not known to be good communicators. In fact, if you're very techy, you need to really work on those soft skills to be able to communicate to people, because it's useless for you to know some information if I can't understand it and do anything with it, right? And so it's kind of like the difference between a bunch of data and the analysis that goes with it to turn it into information. I can make a decision off of information. Anybody can just splurge data all over the place, but now I have to sift through it and everything else. Your job is to boil it down and give them the information they need to make a decision, which is to hire you. So instead of throwing a whole bunch of keywords and bullcrap out there, figure out what capabilities you bring to the table and express that in your elevator speech then. So this goes off of kind of the flow that the Aero Electronics manager gave me was, so first things first, tell me what you can do for me. The next piece is prove it. Certifications and education, right? So I told you I can do these things. A certification is a point in time where you took a test that said you understand enough of this knowledge to do this capability. So certifications and education. Also, you got a master's degree, right? Like, that takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. So tell me what you can do and then prove that you can do it. So I can do stuff, and here's the certifications to prove it. When it comes, and I put both of that, my certifications and education in the same spot, but I only put the highest degree that pertains to what I'm doing. So computer science, that's the highest degree that I have. I don't put my associates, I don't put my history degree, I don't put any of that stuff. I just put my computer science degree that's up there. Caveat to that is you can be in the middle of doing a degree, and I'll kind of point it out with this is this is how I set mine up, right? Like here's all the certifications and when I got them. So I got my CISP in June 2022, which means I'm coming up on my renewal for it. So keep an update to your certs is a big deal too. My CompTIAs and my EC councils, those all I got back in 2020. So it tells them how long I've been doing it. But I need it. If you know anything about them, those would have ran out in 2023. I did renew them, so I have until 2026 or something like that. I got to go back and look at it, but they're pretty good about telling you owe them money and CPEs to renew your items. But keeping them up to date, and that allows them to know how long you've actually held these certifications, which matters. And then for your education, when you graduated, or you can put expected graduation. So you can be in the middle of doing a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, and you just over here in December 2021, either before it or after it, in parentheses, put expected graduation date or expected December 2021 or expected December 2026. And they know, okay, well, you're halfway through your degree now, and we know that you should have it by this time, and we know that you're dedicated to working and so on and so forth. The next part that you go in is so tell me what you can do, prove it to me, and then tell me what tools you use to do those things. So the tools you're familiar with to use. This goes back to using the job description to get good at stuff. If there's a tool that's listed in there and you don't have a clue of what it is, guess what? Google's your friend. RTFM, as many cyber guys would say, read the freaking manual, figure out what these tools are and what they do. There's no shame in not having used a tool. A lot of these tools are specialized. You can only get experience by using them inside of the government, but at least having a knowledge of what they can do and how they would do it goes a long way for a hiring manager to say, okay, you just didn't waste my time. You actually went and researched and found out some of the stuff that you're doing. But the tools that you're used to or familiar with will help them make a decision on you as well, right? Like here's my system software and tools. I'm used to Oracle VirtualBox. I've got a VMware. I pay for the Pro on my home computer because I was going for my OCP. Nmap, Wireshark, Splunk, and just know this helps out. Splunk is a SIEM software, right? Like a security incident event manager. But there's plenty of other things besides Splunk that does the same thing. There's a lot of SIEMs that are out there. So saying the ones that you used to is really helpful. Debian and Red Hat Linux-based Linux, right? So I guess I should probably go fix this. I just put Red Hat instead of RHEL. But Debian and RHEL Linux, right? You know how many flavors of Linux that are out there? A lot. So I just told them, I know Debian commands and Red Hat Linux commands. I may not be as good on the rest of the distributions of Linux. I've got experience with Windows Server 2019, 2016, 2012, R2, 10, IIS, and MSQL databases, right? I actually need to go fix this because I've got a lot more with the cloud side now. But now they know, okay, I've done a bunch of different servers. I can go in. You'd be surprised at how many organizations are using old software. Literally 2008, I've seen people using 2008 servers, and those are out of life support a long time ago. In fact, I think 2012 is out of support now too. Don't quote me on that, but how about this? If you see this in the DoD, they generally are trying to get you to upgrade to something else. But this matters, right? Sometimes there's software that's written for those old servers that are proprietary, that are used by the government, that they can't get around. And so you have to maintain old servers that might have vulnerabilities in how you do it. All that to say is you're showing them the tools that you know how to use and the systems or the frameworks, right? Like I'm pretty good with NIST 853 and 171. I've got the JSIG. And so putting JSIG on there as Joint Security Implementation Guide. If they know what that is, they'll know this acronym. If not, then it doesn't matter. But I'm able to just say, they're like, do you know what the JSIG actually is? Like, yeah, it's Joint Security Implementation Guide. I have to talk about it. The CCSRG, they're like, do you know what CCSRG is? Like, yeah, Cloud Computing Security Relegation Guides. And you can talk through those pieces. But them knowing that you have that stuff, or even if you're going for the DoD, EMAS, HBSS, these are all DoD specific tooling they use. And so me telling them that I can use these tools tells them already like, oh, this guy's just going to slide right into the team then. Like he works pretty well. He's got good interpersonal skills and he's used the tools that we use. And so doing this helps them identify if you're going to be a very good fit or not. Or they may be a small company that's going to have to do bids on these things. And like, this gives them a say, yeah, this guy's been doing this before. So, to cover it down again, tell me what you can do, prove it to me, and what systems and tools you're using to do it. And then you go into your experience, which is down here. And so now your experience, go back. Now your experience can be shown. And this is where I will say, actually, I think it's on the next slide, so I'll wait until the next slide. But in your experience, you tend to, I bulletize a lot of stuff. You can write a narrative. It makes it a little bit easier to read bullets. I think a lot of people are going to the bulletized set because it's just much easier to parse through very quickly. It separates out the things. You can kind of skim through it and find out what you want to see in there a lot easier and quicker. But your experiences last, right? Like in the tech side of the world, tell me what you can do, prove it to me with the certifications, tell me the tools you use to do it, and now tell me how long you've been doing it for and what your specific experience is. To going on to the next piece, and this is what I was kind of talking about before, using your words well. A lot of people argue about this, to bulletize or not. Yes, if they bulletize the duties, right? So if you look at a duty description, it says they're bulletized in what they want. Use bulletization in your experience set. No, they write a narrative of what they want. I would argue then probably write a narrative for your experience description. That's kind of that feedback back and forth of like, oh, I'm paying attention to what you're doing. You wrote a narrative, you probably want to see a narrative from me. You wrote bullets, you'll probably want to see bullets from me. It's like you're able to match the energy of the organization. Caveat to that is they could just be lazy and they don't really care, and then it probably won't matter anyway. The next thing on using your words well in your resume, paraphrasing is key. Funny little thing, who knew 8th grade English would come back to haunt me? I failed 8th grade English, like to the tune of when I was going to graduate high school, I had to take a CLEP test for Algebra 1 and 8th grade English because I failed them. In English, I guess that was 9th grade, 8th grade. No, 9th grade. C'est la vie. Anyway, base level English, right? Learning how to paraphrase, parse words down, use their language to tell your experience, right? Paraphrase, paraphrase, paraphrase. Use the duties to describe your experience. So I'll kind of bring this up real quick. Here's like my document for doing all my bullets and stuff. These are the bullets they said for their duties. It said manage resources responsible for developing, creating, maintaining new or modifying existing applications, right? So then I would say, hey, I manage resources on the modeling transition capabilities environment, MCTE, and I'm responsible for developing, creating, and maintaining a couple of these applications. I would name the applications that I've done, so STAR, NCC, so on and so forth. I didn't develop and create all of them. A lot of it's maintaining. All that to say is I would use this point specifics of what I've done, but in saying that, like developing, creating, and maintaining these applications and modifying these applications, right? And now it's like, okay, I've got point specific, but I really just use your words to say, I have done this in these things. And then it's easy enough for them to verify. They'll go back and like, oh, you said modeling transition capabilities environment, like MCTE, like, oh, look it up. And they're like, okay, this is a real thing. So you're not BSing on this. So that's the quick down and dirty of how to like paraphrase it out. Or supervise teams in the collection and analyzation of information to determine, recommend, and plan the development, new application or modification, application, critical assistant DHS. I'd go back and say, like, I have supervised a team. I've supervised a team in collecting and analyzing X, Y, and Z application using this information to recommend, to determine a course of action or recommend to supervisors the development of modifications for this application. And that would be critical to, and these applications are critical to DHS and CISA. And so like that would be my first swing at it, right? Like I just now pulled out of my rear 2 descriptions of duties that would go to that. Now, I wouldn't just throw that in and then like shoot the resume off. I would go through and make these duties to describe my experience, write them out. I generally like write them out overnight or in the evening, and then I sleep on it. And I'll wake up in the morning and the next day and I'll take a look, and go through it and say, okay, hey, good to go. I'll reread it and say, oh, that doesn't make stinking sense to me at all. And I'll go back and add things. I'm like, oh, I was way off. Why? Modeling transition capabilities environment. It was modeling uh, capabilities and transformation environment. Like I could have been wrong on some of the stuff. So using that to point specific, put your information into their phrasing is key. And then the next thing I'll say is numbers everywhere. Um, Technical people like to know numbers and hear numbers. It gives them a taste of where you're at in the life cycle and your capabilities. An enclave of 20 systems is a whole lot different to manage than an enclave of 10,000 systems. When you're doing 10,000 systems and that's mixed between Linux and Macintosh and Windows, and you've got a team managing those things, you have to have a lot of automation, and you can't get down and like one man going in and fixing one machine point specifically all the time, right? Like you have to know group policy objects pretty well. You have to know Active Directory. You know how to make those things mesh together in a manner where you manage it. We're on a 20-person system. Probably don't have to do that. A lot of times 20 system enclave, you don't have to put group policy objects out there. You can individually manage each one of those by one person a lot of the times going through it. And so just knowing where your experience is at on those things is a big key player. It's not negative to have a smaller enclave, and it's not, a big positive to have a big enclave. It just allows them to know where you would fit out on their team or the areas they would need to work with you to improve. But numbers, numbers, numbers. If you can quantify anything, that always goes great. Now, with numbers, you're like, oh, I know I did a certain amount, but I don't remember the specific exact numbers. It's okay to estimate, but be as accurate as possible. Don't go in there and be like, yeah, I did 100 computers and really you only did 40. But if you did between 40 and 50, I would either split the difference, be like 45, or I would just shoot low and be like, I did 40. And they're like, did you really do 40? Like, well, it was around 40 to 50. We had some come up and come down. It's cloud environment. We had multiple EC2 instances that we would blow away and bring back and do stuff. And so like that gives you a chance to have a conversation with them if they really ask it. But giving at least an estimate to the numbers helps them identify where you sit at in the capabilities and what you need to do. The next thing I say is there's no plagiarism in resume writing. Only lying, right? There's no crying in baseball. There's no plagiarism in resume writing. You're not going to go to jail. Nobody's going to pull your freaking academic record and blah, blah, blah. You can use other people's bullets if you want to, if you've done the work. Don't lie on your resume, but don't reinvent the wheel, right? Like if you've seen my resume or you see any of my bullets and you've done what I've done, by all means use them. Here's the other part is you can just paraphrase my paraphrasing. Yeah. So if you have other people that show you their resumes and they have bullets that are close to what you've done, by all means use the verbiage they use and kind of add and remove the places you worked and the numbers you did, but don't reinvent the wheel. That'll save you a lot of time. And this is already going to take a lot of time. So if you can kind of shave it down some and you see somebody that's pretty good, like I'm not the greatest writer. I've got a lot of experience now, so I'm getting better at it. But I will be the first one to be like, yeah, somebody's probably got a better write-up than me. Guess what? I'm going to read their write-up and like, oh, that sounds really good. How can I reuse this to explain what I've done? Oh, that's great. So don't reinvent the wheel. Lastly, feel free to use my or other people's bullets if you've done the work. Don't lie, don't lie, don't lie. But definitely use other people's already built systems. That is, it's like, are you going to really go in and tear down a house that's on a piece of property and build a whole brand new house? Maybe if you really hate everything that's there, but on the whole, people just come in, they slap some paint on the walls, they make sure the holes are patched, they add a porch maybe, and they make sure the roof is good. Do the same thing with your resume. There's no shame in that. Lastly, it's okay to suck. This, I don't know how many times I have to, this video is really kind of targeted to the junior guys or people that are needing some like help. They just haven't gotten traction on resume, which is, this is a process. Guess what? Not everybody's great at everything. Good to go. I suck at a lot of stuff. I'm an okay swimmer. I'm an okay writer. I'm pretty good at project management. I'm pretty good at leadership. I can do a bunch of these different things. Um, but I'm not great at everything. Like, this is a process. If you are not good at resume writing, practice it. That's going to take some effort and time and just continuous repetitions. It's against like exercising or anything else. You're not going to be able to bench press 500 pounds tomorrow, but within a year, you can work up the reps and increase your capabilities to be able to do that if you want to. So this is a process. It's a reiterative thing. Work at it. Do it over and over again. I will tell you, I've continuously rewritten my resumes. I've got a USA Jobs and civilian resume. They kind of mirror each other now because I'm able to just kind of pick and choose what I want to go for right now. But at the very beginning, I was like, oh, I need a job. Oh, Lord, I need a job. And so I was 5, 6, 7 different resumes. I had 3 or 4 of the same type of resume written. And so having multiple resumes is going to be key to A, getting better at your process, but B, it helps you think through a lot of what's going on. It will give you the ability to point specifically, just change the resume really quick to apply to a certain job, right? Like, so if you can change a resume in 5 minutes to apply point specifically to a job, that saves you a lot of time. That helps out. I update my resume every few months or when I have a job that I like. So if I have a job that I like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to take a look at the resume and like, okay, how do I change this around to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward? And they can see that I have the experience they want, or at least most of the experience they want. Next thing I'll say is, hey man, this is just Eric Crump. I'm just a dude. Try different things, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm the best at this or anything else. I got a good friend, Trent Bonnell. He does resume writing a little bit different than I do. Probably half and half. Like, I don't use his way. He's told me several different things. I'm like, I don't really like that way. But his way works as well, right? He's had jobs. He's helped people write their resumes. He knows some good stuff. So other people out there have different things. Honestly, my real viewpoint is, man, your resume is just a personal representation of you, right? This is your, on paper, who you are to the world of business that's going to help you get a job and allow you to have work and stuff like that. So, if you want to make it a little bit more flowery and a lot more like artsy, hey, do it. Sometimes they get a little bit upset if you're putting butterflies and crap on there. If you want to go cold, hard, just the facts, man, I'm in a black and white resume, kind of like what I have. It's like no nonsense. I'm not here to, church it up. Don't try to church it up, Joe. Do that, right? Like, this is your representation to people out in the real world. Be flexible enough to change it if people are like, no, this doesn't work for me. But there's no right way to do a resume. There's just your way of doing a resume, besides making sure you don't have any spelling mistakes and grammar and stuff. But if you find that you're not getting traction, change it up. Try something different. Like, okay, nobody's calling me back on this resume. I'm not getting even a bite on it. They're like, well, okay, I give it 3 or 4 job submittals, and if I don't get traction, I'm going to try to go back and look at how I'm doing my stuff and try a different way. If I see somebody else's resume, like, as much as I said I don't do resume reviews, I do some point specific for very limited people. I don't charge for anything else. But if I see their resume, I see something on their resume that I like, I'm like, oh, I like that. Like, I'll incorporate that into my resume. Okay, good to go. That's a good way to do something. So try different things. It's just my way. Shake it up and ask other people for their resumes, right? Like, most people are willing to give you their resume because you never know, in the future you could be a hiring manager, and then it starts to cycle. So, it's a long game. But ask other people for their resumes. They more than likely will give it to you and let you see their stuff. And you in turn say, hey, will you review my resume? Will you give me some pointers on it if you want to? And then feel free to not implement anything anybody says, right? Like, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, can you review my resume? And like, I write out 15 things they could change, and they're like, oh, thanks for the information, now go pound sand. I don't get upset. I don't get hurt. I don't do anything else. Like, hey, I'm just trying to help you out. And if you like what I said, great. And if you don't like what I said, no harm, no foul. So don't get personally upset when people recommend changes to your resume, and then also just be willing to be like, thank you for your time, but I don't think I'm going to do that for me right now. So there's the long and the short from Eric Crump. Hopefully this video is helping you people out and will give somebody guidance on making their resume better. I know I was lost in the sauce, and so I'm hoping that I can at least cut the path short for people who may be lost and not knowing how to implement proper strategies for their resume, because it really does take a strategy. It's a goal and it takes a plan to do. So, that being said, last but not least, I love skydiving. That's my passion. I was a parachute rigger in the Marine Corps. Me and the wife skydive. These pictures are from like 2017 when we jumped with my brother Jimmy down in Spaceland. If you never skydive before, go skydive. It's a great sport. Have fun. Do it. Thank you for your time, and I really hope that you are blessed and this helps you out. And have a good follow on watching of my videos.